If HBO's Chernobyl was a series with a new disaster every season, what event would you like to see covered? Many OPs in this thread left links to read more about the disasters they describe. I will leave these links in the video description. Enjoy the video. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911. 150 died, most of them young women, because the doors were locked to prevent workers from taking breaks and inventory and they couldn't leave the building. This sparked outrage and spurred the development of many work safety standards we have today. Would have been a tragic show, but interesting to see how it changed the safety of work in the West. The owners of the building escaped alive via the roof and were indicted for manslaughter, got off with paying a fine, and then were found to have locked the doors at their next factory as well. Only Chernobyl and Fukushima have ranked as worse incidents, but KYSHTYM affected 4x as many people. Because of the secrecy surrounding the facility, nobody was told anything about it until a week later, when soldiers suddenly showed up and started slaughtering all the livestock and burning everything, not telling all the people why they were being rounded up and evacuated. They said it was a special disease. Some other people weren't evacuated for a year or more. Came here to say this. The whole Mayak facility is a nightmare. Lake Karachay was particularly bad up to fairly recently. The sediment of the lake bed is estimated to be composed almost entirely of high-level radioactive waste deposits to a depth of roughly 3.4 meters, 11 feet. The radiation level in the region near where radioactive effluent is discharged into the lake was 600 roentgens per hour, approximately 6 SV/H, in 1990. 600 R/HR in a lake is absolutely bonkers. I would like the 1917 Canadian blast. The largest man-made explosion until nuclear bombs in 1945. Not so much for the blast but for the rebuilding and dealing with it. Was also going to say the Halifax explosion. There could be some really emotional stuff with the way Boston provided relief. The train dispatcher, Vince Coleman, who managed to warn an incoming train, 700 passengers, to stop before the city, but died from his injuries from the explosion. The politics of why the munitions ship wasn't flying the correct flags. The little girl who froze to death waiting overnight for someone to take her home. Bhopal. It injured a lot of people and the series of mistakes that caused it to occur is insane. Edit. This was a chemical leak that killed 2,500 people in the immediate aftermath and thousands more long-term. 558,125 injuries were recorded due to it. Here's some more info. The plant, located in India, made pesticides out of methyl isocyanate, mic, and alpha-naphthol. It had a number of storage tanks of this and other chemicals, but we'll focus on the mic. Mic causes chemical burns, blindness, and loss of lung function, just to name a few. The recommended capacity of the tanks was 60% due to it being a gas. At the time of the leak the tanks were at 70%. The tanks had a number of safety features that at the time were either broken or not being used. The main issue being refrigerators meant to keep the gas cool. Many of the workers were untrained in what to look for, but the real issue is that the refrigerators were not turned on, not because they didn't work, but to save money. There's much more to it than that. Mic is a liquid at room temp. It reacts violently with water, which is extremely exothermic. They were cleaning pipes and did it so wrong that they ended up dumping a bunch of water into the mic tank. This immediate exothermic reaction is what caused it to heat up so much where it boiled into a gas, and was released through the pressure safety valve designed to prevent a pressure explosion. Also, those death stats are likely lower than the real ones. The Costa Concordia. The mixture of incredibly brave and competent people vs the idiot captain and the spectacular nature the disaster itself would make for some damn incredible television. I'd love to see lots of different perspectives on it. 5.1. Was it the one where the captain basically just went like, I'm helping right now, I'm off the ship, but I'm helping? Proceeds to not explain how he was helping. No, I won't go back on the ship cause it's too dark. I don't need to go back on, I'm already helping. The sinking of MV Swole actually. 300 kids on a school tripo and hundreds other passengers dead B/C of the incompetent captain and crew, as well as the Coast Guard. The president's actions, or lack thereof, where she completely disappeared for 7 hours was also a big part of why Pres. Park Geun-hye was impeached. This needs to be a series that goes from the fallout of the accident down to the protests in December 2016 that brought down the Park administration. On that note, I recommend watching the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary on the Hillsborough Stadium disaster. Edit. I see a lot of Liverpool fans commenting on this. Those of you who read /r/soccer might recognize me as a Napolista, but I have nothing but sympathy for Merseyside regarding one of the darkest days in football history. Non sorai mai sola, you'll never walk alone. What bothered me most about this is that the blame was completely put on the people that died. They were called hooligans, despite the fact that there were a million signs that showed that poor design and poor management led to this instead. I mean, they knowingly let in more people than what was considered maximum capacity. I came here to mention this. The theme of Chernobyl was the ineptitude and pride of people. All of these natural disasters that have been suggested couldn't really have been avoided or even mitigated in the level of disaster, but like Chernobyl, the Hillsborough massacre was all about mismanagement of leadership and the ignorance on the severity of the situation by the people that got caught up in the tragedy. The most terrifying aspect of these stories is that we entrust our safety to those that we rely on to know better, but in the end, we're all the same. We are prideful and stubborn to a fault when given authority over others. Halifax explosion. I read a book about it last year. Amazing how it created a bond between Boston and Halifax that lives on today. IIRC, Halifax recently revived the tradition of sending a Christmas tree to Boston to thank them for their help. Boston without hesitation loaded trainloads of relief supplies and medical specialists within 24 hours. They didn't wait, they just ran to help. Also interesting how many people were blinded by window glass because they were watching the ship burn in the harbor when it exploded. Optometrists from all over the region flooded to Halifax to give free care to the survivors. Would love to see a show about this. The Walker and Water tragedy. Please. I lived through it. We drank contaminated water for almost a week before they told us the truth. 7 people died, including one of my family members. We were all sick, and no one knew what was happening. The water treatment plant tried to cover it up by pumping chlorine into the wells, to hide the contaminated test results. The hospital was flooded with people and, because they were told it couldn't be E. coli, they were treating the wrong illness and actually made it worse. In some cases the hospital staff were told specifically that the water wasn't the problem, and so they advised us to drink water to help with the sickness. I wish someone would tell our story. Edit. 6 people died and over 2,000 were made seriously ill with HUS or related. I wish someone would have told this story last year during the provincial election campaign. Instead we heard about how bad rain days and cancelling gas plants were. I remember hearing about Walker and the day the entire town got sick. It was eerie, an entire town just sick for no reason. Now it's not eerie. It's infuriating. And mark my words, we're heading for something similar soon. That's what bad, incompetent governments do. Centralia, Pennsylvania. It's a ghost town because the coal that runs under the city is on fire. It has been for many years. Edit. Thank you for the precious metals. Also, if you are intrigued by Centralia, look up the Times Beach, Missouri disaster that also required the town to be evacuated. Centralia is an incredibly cool story, but if it were to be an event from Pennsylvania, it should be the Johnstown, Pennsylvania flood. This was such a major catastrophic event. Over 2,200 people died and damages exceeding $474 million in modern estimates. All because some rich weirdos wanted a private resort lake that they modified and stripped of safety features to suit their aesthetic and budget. The dam creating the lake failed during heavy rainfall, causing a massive tsunami that ripped through the local area, picking up various debris, creating a massive wall of water, mud, masonry, and, miles of barbed wire after it went through the local Gautier wire works. The event provoked a massive outpouring of support, disaster relief, and charity in response. However, the survivors of the flood failed to recover damages from those who failed to maintain the dam, rich magnates of the time including Henry Clay Frick, which pushed American law to reform tort law as a result. Fascinating and horrifying story. Obligatory edit. Thanks for the gold, stranger. I wish I had gone into more detail about the Johnstown flood, but I really didn't think my comment would get so much attention. I love seeing comments from people from Johnstown and Pittsburgh. I never lived in Johnstown, did in Pittsburgh, but I've been to the town and had some awesome friends from there. Some comments added some more of the amazing breadth of this disaster, such as the fire at the Stone Bride in Johnstown that killed several people who had managed to survive the initial flood. I also want to add details about East Conemaugh, another town hit. The village of East Conemaugh was next. One witness on high ground near the town described the water as almost obscured by debris, resembling a huge hill rolling over and over. 15 From his idle locomotive in the town's rail yard, the engineer John Hess heard and felt the rumbling of the approaching flood. Throwing his locomotive into reverse, Hess raced backward toward East Conemaugh, the whistle blowing constantly. His warning saved many people who reached high ground. When the flood hit, it picked up the locomotive and floated it aside. Hess himself survived, but at least 50 people died, including about 25 passengers stranded on trains in the town. As one commenter pointed out, the flood was also the first time the American Red Cross was mobilized during peacetime, and Clara Barton notably led relief efforts as well. While the members of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club did contribute some funds to the relief efforts, and Carnegie later built a library for the town, among other libraries he built, two prominent members used their law firm to prevent the club from ever being held civilly or criminally liable. The club had known the dam was not properly maintained, and in fact part of the reason why warnings that the dam might fail that day were not taken seriously was because the telegraph operators thought it was another false alarm and, if the threat were real, a higher-up club member would be delivering the warnings. The dam caused the largest loss of civilian life in America at the time, later only exceeded by the 1900 Galveston hurricane and 9/11. Jonestown. The Great Fire of London. Edit, thanks for silver nice stranger. The Exxon Valdez oil spill. There's a series of episodes of American scandal that almost scratch the surface of the shit that went down. Edit, I'd like to add, yes, there is a movie that was made in 1992 for HBO, Dead Ahead, as has been pointed out in the comments, which I definitely need to watch. I do think that there's quite a bit more that can be covered than in 90 or so minutes, and in a serial format like the Up Asked. Maybe not 5 to 6 hours like Chernobyl, but enough for 3 to 4 healthy episodes, IMO. The Hartford Circus fire would make a great story. It killed 167 people and injured more than 700 in an place that was supposed to be full of happiness and joy. Because of this famous photograph of sad clown Emmett Kelly wore a bucket of water, it became known as the day the clowns cried. This is from the wiki about the start of the fire and sounds like a scene out of a show. The fire began as a small flame after the lions performed, on the southwest side wall of the tent, while the Great Wallendas were performing. Circus band leader Merle Evans was said to have been the first to spot the flames, and immediately directed the band to play The Stars and Stripes Forever, the tune that traditionally signaled distress to all circus personnel. Ringmaster Fred Bradna urged the audience not to panic and to leave in an orderly fashion, but the power failed and he could not be heard. Bradna and the ushers unsuccessfully tried to maintain some order as the panicked crowd tried to flee the big top. The tsunami in Thailand in 2004. Challenger. NASA also launched when there was heavy wind shear at altitude. The O-ring failed at liftoff but sealed as designed, but the seal broke when the shuttle was hit by a wind shear. For a full 27 seconds, the shuttle plunged through this turbulence, with the flight computer reacting exactly as it should have for the situation, making corrections as necessary to keep Challenger on course. As the NASA report noted, however, the wind shear caused the steering system to be more active than on any previous flight. This unfortunate situation put even greater stresses on the already compromised right solid rocket booster. Towards the end of the shuttle sequence of maneuvers, a plume of flame became noticeable from the booster by those observing on the ground, as those added stresses broke the seal on the right booster rocket, and allowed the exhaust gases to escape through the joint, once again. The launch violated two launch constraints which together brought it down.